soul. Never know your heart. Ain't no love, know how to sit and try to tell me. I'm just waiting on somebody to show me.
And good morning, everyone. You are tuned in to 96.1 FM, 900 AM WURD on the Education Pulse. And I'm going to turn over to Dr. Height. Dr. Height, good morning.
Thank you, Jordan, and good morning, everyone. This is another episode of Education Pulse featuring news from the School District of Philadelphia. We have an exciting show for you this morning, and this is a show that is occurring during Women's History Month. Because of that, we're going to celebrate during this show women in education. And so can't wait to introduce our guests that will be joining me momentarily. But before we begin, I want to give just a few brief updates as we typically do on the show. And first and foremost, this past week, we're excited because we welcomed back about 2,400 students across 53 schools. On Monday, we will welcome back another group of pre-K through second grade students at an additional 45 schools, and we will receive the next set of schools on Sunday to announce on Monday, March 15th, for students to return March 22nd. Yesterday, we also notified families that the selection window will open for families who had chose previously to remain digital last fall. They will also have the option to opt into hybrid learning. And we're going to do a similar selection process last fall. And we're going to do a similar selection process that we did last fall. And they're going to be for pre-K through second grade families. They're going to be able to choose between the hybrid learning model and 100% digital learning model once again. If a family chooses hybrid learning, that means that their children will be able to attend school in person 2 days per week and engage in digital learning 3 days a week based on an assigned schedule, beginning the week of Monday, April 5th. This is for all students who in pre-K through second grade who have not chosen to go to the hybrid learning model. We're going to reopen that selection process this week. These schedules are designed to safely limit the number of students in schools and to help maintain social distancing guidelines. This is all work that we're doing with a view towards continuing to work towards a full fall reopening. And we're going to continue to work with the city and other partners who've been critical in helping us get to this point. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to emphasize safety, academic supports, and enrichment, behavior, mental and behavioral health counseling, and building repairs, just to ensure that our buildings are ready to receive as many children as possible. Another exciting thing that happened this week was that President Biden signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And this is an historic investment in like cities, education, institutions like the School District of Philadelphia and states. And hopefully this will help us to really start to address the devastating impact of this global pandemic. But with that, School District of Philadelphia will receive lots of new revenue, and it's one-time revenue, I may add, and I know people would love for us to spend and invest these revenues on things that are recurring, but we're going to really be focused on the things that I've described earlier. It's like academic recovery, making sure buildings are COVID safe, making sure that we have behavioral and mental health supports for our young people and for our adults. And we will be using these for the one-time investments that they are designed for, but those one-time investments that have long-term impacts. And so we can think of lots of things that we could do, particularly around our facilities and infrastructure, technology, making sure that we're able to address the learning loss of our young people. So stay tuned for more information around that. We're very excited about that. And as a matter of fact, this week coming up on March 18th, there's a hearing on a public hearing on our budget for next year. And so anyone who is interested in signing up to speak during that process can do so by going to the Board of Education page. You can find that on our website at philasd.org. As I indicated at the start of this broadcast, this is an exciting show for us because it actually this is occurring during the month of Women's History. And I have three incredible guests this morning. And one of those guests is the first in two categories, the first African-American and the first woman who was a superintendent in the School District of Philadelphia. That is Dr. Constance Clayton. And it's an honor to have her on the show with us. And after I talk with Dr. Clayton, we'll also be talking with Shaquita Smith. And Shaquita is in our academic office, and she does a lot of work with respect to social studies curriculum because she's a specialist in that department. And she's going to talk a bit about how we're integrating our curriculum to ensure that it is inclusive, all the cultures we serve. And then we'll also be talking to President Brenda Allen, and she's president of Lincoln University. So lots of great guests to celebrate and to kick off Women's History Month. And I want to kick it off with Dr. Clayton. And so first and foremost, Dr. Clayton, it's great to see you, and thank you for joining us this morning.
I'm honored to be a guest. Thank you very much. You and I have not been in contact for almost a year, unfortunately. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share in this program, particularly with my colleagues at Lincoln and in curriculum.
Yes.
And I'm really very, very pleased, Dr. Haidt, to hear the reopening of our schools for our children. It's absolutely essential and critical. So that was very good news to begin the show.
Well, thank you, Dr. Clayton. You know how critically important that is. And so coming from you, thank you for sharing that. And you're right, we haven't talked in almost a year, and I usually make it a point to ensure that I'm contacting you both for advice and your wisdom. And so thank you once again for being here this morning. But I had a question for you. I mean, and it's an honor to have you on the show today, and to celebrate the tireless commitment that you have always had to the children of Philadelphia. But over the past several years, we have seen a lot of firsts for Black women. And just this week, we saw Marsha Fudge become the first woman to serve as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Naturally, we have our Vice President, Kamala Harris, first woman, the first African American, and the first South Asian American to hold the office of Attorney General in the state's history, first female and first Black and first Asian American U.S. Vice President, and Stacey Abrams, who was the first African American female who was a majority party gubernatorial nominee in the United States. And so My question to you, Dr. Clayton, is as the first woman and the first African American to serve as the superintendent of schools in Philadelphia, tell us about what it means for you as a Black woman to carry that mantle first.
Well, it was an honor, but actually, in reality, and to be honest, there were others who set the pace, who did creditable jobs with great competencies, who made it possible for me to become the superintendent. And I refer to a woman who could have certainly been the first superintendent. That's Dr. Ruth Wright Hare.
Yeah.
And then another woman was Marshall Neal Young, Dr. Marshall Neal Young. But to be very honest with you, Dr. Height, there were some African American gentlemen who could have had that distinction as well. And I refer to Dr. Robert Poindexter.
Yeah.
I refer to Dr. Marcus Foster and Dr. Bernard C. Watson.
Yeah.
So there were many African Americans who were qualified, committed, had the competencies and the skills to manage the school district of Philadelphia in spite of what we found.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And like your wisdom is always something that I've relied on. And so thinking about both of those African American women and men who...
Yes, because I'm not going to allow this society to neglect our African American men. They're much too eager to do that, and they do it too often. Our men do not deserve it. Our children do not deserve it. Their families do not deserve it. And so therefore, I am still Connie, and I'm still outspoken.
That's right. You go ahead, Dr. Clayton. And as a lifelong educator, I mean, and you've seen and been able to observe, and you've started your comments with being glad that we are getting children back into school. But as a lifelong educator, looking through the lens of tackling uncertain times, collectively, I mean, we've made some progress, but by the same token, there's still a long ways to go. And so I mean, as you've seen what we've been dealing with as we focus on the pandemic, I mean, what are your thoughts on like how that may impact certain children more than others?
Well, the very fact that we know that it is a possibility, and when I look at the statistical data regarding the number of families without jobs, without food, it's unthinkable, and it is absolutely inexcusable. It's criminal.
Right.
And so therefore, I think we need to do everything possible to support the president's in his speech last night,
Yeah.
which enumerated the kinds of expectations and the plans that they have. So I am delighted to see that, but we need to be behind him 1,000%.
Yeah.
And to make it clear to everybody, and particularly for those who are aspiring to continue to hold office or to get office, that they'll never get there because they will not have our vote unless they vote for our children and for our families.
And Dr. Clayton, you've always represented the children and families, and
well, I had 170,000 children and families, 170,000. And when I took the oath of office to become superintendent, I made a commitment, a personal commitment, that under no circumstances would I ever let them down. And I had to live up to my own. I grew up in a household where your word was your honor, it was your bond. And if you said you were going to do something, you did it. And I never made an excuse to my family for not getting something done.
yeah.
And my grandmother and mother would not have understood my becoming delinquent in any way. And then, of course, another model for me, in addition to my grandmother and mother, was the first lady who ran for the presidency, who said, "I am unbought and unbossed."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that and appreciate your perspective. But so what advice would you give like superintendents today, Dr. Clayton, and as you've thought about this work and have been and continue to be outspoken around like what's right for children.
I'd ask them to treat every child as if it was his or her own,
Yeah.
and whatever they want for their children, they want for other families' children,
Yeah. No.
and to believe in our children, because unfortunately, people think, particularly that minority children cannot achieve,
Right.
and they are so wrong because they can. They have the mental ability, and they have the support systems in many of the families. I've never met a family or talked to a mother who didn't want more for her child than she or other members of the family had. Never. Although people think that parents are uninterested and incapable of helping their children, that is absolutely not true. And even if it was true, we have a moral obligation.
That's right.
Since this country delights in saying that children are our greatest asset, it needs to become more than a cute phrase. It needs to become a reality. And we owe it to our children to give them everything and to help them reach their fullest potential. Because it was my experience that they did it. I'll never forget an experience I had. I visited classrooms unannounced. It made people nervous, but that's their problem, not mine.
That's right.
So I'll never forget that I visited an algebra class. And I had the help of a young professor from Temple who reviewed the algebra curriculum for the school district, but he said something's missing, Dr. Clayton. And when I went to his class, what he had children doing, he had kids go to the chalkboard to do an algebraic problem. And if they were making a mistake, then the class would just give a sigh. But when they were doing very well, everybody in the classroom applauded them. And I was standing behind a young kid who was at the chalkboard doing that. And I must tell you, I was scared to death the professor might call on me. Because I wasn't sure that I could do it. But she did it, and the class applauded. And that kid jumped clean off the floor and said to me, Dr. Clayton, I did it. And I turned around to her and I said, I know you did, because I knew you could. I want to say the only person in the room probably who couldn't do it was me.
Yeah, I mean, and it speaks to the expectations. It speaks to why expectations are so critically important, especially for our young people. And it's interesting you talked about never meeting a parent. Excuse me, because I've also, in opportunities to visit households, I don't think, Dr. Clayton, I've met a parent yet in all my years of doing this, and you certainly have been doing it longer than me, but I don't think I've ever met a parent who said, I don't want for my child anything that's going to happen negative. I don't want them to fail. I've never heard one say, I want them to fail. I want them to be suspended. I want them to get into trouble. They all want what we all want for our own children. And so this notion of expectations is critically important. Dr. Clayton, I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I talked about like part of what we're going to use the money for that we're getting from the federal government is really to address issues with our facilities. And, you know, we have buildings that are very old here in the city of Philadelphia. And I know that at the time when you were superintendent, you were able to address some of this, but, you know, some of it was beyond our collective abilities to address from a budgetary perspective. And that's why we've always been advocating for more resources for young people. But can you talk a little bit about how, when you were superintendent, like you had to prioritize things in terms of like the work that happened in buildings versus the work that needed to happen academically versus all of the other work?
Well, it didn't become versus. One depended on the other.
That's right.
Our children deserve the right to be in stable buildings, and our buildings are very old.
Yep.
But one thing, I'm going to tell you now, we didn't have all the answers. That's an important thing to realize, that you may have some ideas, but you don't have all the answers. So I never hesitated to reach out to staff and to people not in the system, to the corporate community.
Yeah.
Because the school district belongs to our children, but it belongs to the whole city. And everybody has a responsibility for ensuring that our children reach their fullest potential. I don't know that there is an Albert Einstein somewhere in Philadelphia public schools. Why not? There's another Martin Luther King.
Oh, they're everywhere. Oh, they're everywhere in their schools, Dr. Clayton, and you
They
know
really
that.
are.
Yeah, indeed they are. And all we have to do is make sure they have access and opportunity and support, and those expectations that you talked about. Hey, Dr. Clayton, it's always good to see you. We're right up against a break, and I just want to thank you for being able to come on this morning. Also want to just thank you for being the outspoken leader and advocate you have always been for children and families of the city of
Then let me
Philadelphia.
continue to speak out. Let me just add this before we go into the break.
Yes.
And that is that you have your curriculum person there with you, and I'm delighted to hear that. And I would hope that some attention is being given to a work that I consider extremely important that I did prior to becoming superintendent. And that was the writing of the curriculum guide for African and Afro-American history.
Yep.
I was tired of looking, so I was a social studies science collaborator for the district, and I was tired of looking at social studies books that always introduced us from slavery on. And we had many achievements in Africa prior to, and the African nation had many successful endeavors prior to slavery. And our children need to know who they are.
Absolutely.
And others need to know who we are. And the fantastic contributions we have made to society, like performing the first heart operation was done by an African American doctor. We have another scientist that is compared to George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
So our children need to know it so that they can look up in a book or any place else, in a movie, anywhere, and see somebody who looks like them. And I went to a segregated school in Philadelphia, and we had an all-black faculty and a black principal who was G. Tanner Duckery, the tallest man I had ever seen in my life. But I must tell you, we never had an assembly or our classes that our teachers didn't tell us about who we were and great people in our race who had made significant accomplishments. So therefore, I hope the curriculum guide is being updated to include our first African American president.
Yeah.
And anyone else, and our first vice president.
Indeed.
So if your curriculum director is listening, I hope she hears what I'm saying. And if they've already started the work on getting that done, and that we will have the money, and feel free to ask the fraternal groups and black organizations to help pay for it, but ask the city and the state to continue meeting their responsibilities. And the curriculum guide needs to be in every school. And library books need to be in every school. I found library doors in the schools locked. I was absolutely appalled. And we need books for our children. And they need to learn the process of going in and borrowing a book. And they're responsible to return it when they're finished. So, Dr. Haidt, we're past the break, and I'm still talking. I'm sorry.
Indeed. And Dr. Clayton, we had to go to a break, but when we come back, we'll be talking to Sequita Smith, and she is in the curriculum office, and she's a social studies specialist, but she's also been recognized by the Philadelphia Citizen as a 2020 integrity icon. And so it's a global initiative to honor public servants who go above and beyond their job descriptions to uplift their communities in meaningful ways. And we're going to hear from Shaquita when we come back from the break. But Dr. Clayton, before we go, I want to thank you once again for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much.
Indeed, thank you. Be safe.
COVID-19 has highlighted the need for digital equity and internet adoption programs. Comcast's Internet Essentials program is designed to connect families to low-cost, high-speed internet and laptops so students can be ready for anything. Since 2011, Comcast has connected 4 million students from low-income families to the internet through its Internet Essentials program. Learn more about how Internet Essentials is connecting students.
all you ashy folk, I got the solution for your ashy skin. Nubian K Essentials all natural body lotions at www.nubiankessentials.com. Also found at Hakeem's, 210 South 52nd Street, the Wayne Avenue Health Store, 5007 Wayne Avenue, and Cultural Exchange, 1450 Point Breeze Avenue. Or go to www.nubiankessentials.com and kiss your ashy skin goodbye. This Women's History Month, WURD Radio is proud to celebrate Black women innovators and trailblazers who have helped us all level up.
Trailblazing Black woman Madam C.J. Walker was an African-American entrepreneur, philanthropist, and political and social activist. Madam Walker is best known for the business she founded, Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. During the height of her career, Walker and her company employed several thousand women as sales agents for its products. In addition to training in sales and grooming, Walker showed other Black women how to budget, build their own businesses, and encouraged them to become financially independent. The company claimed to have trained nearly 20,000 women. Walker began organizing her sales agents into state and local clubs. The result ended up being the Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culturist Union of America. At the time of her death, Madam C.J. Walker was considered the wealthiest African-American businesswoman and wealthiest self-made Black woman in America.
This Women's History Month vignette was brought to you by Bank of America and New Voices for Reproductive Justice, Women of Color Herstory. WURD recognizes Black women innovators and entrepreneurs who are making history every day. Nominate a Black woman-owned business for our Level Up contest. Go to WURDradio.com for more information. Brought to you by Bank of America, Comcast, Keystone First, PICO, Thomas Jefferson University, and Jefferson Health.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
And we're back, Dr. Height.
Thank you. And right before the break, we were talking with Dr. Constance Clayton, and Dr. Clayton is renowned here in the city of Philadelphia and was the first African-American and first woman to serve as superintendent of the school district of Philadelphia. And because we are celebrating Women's History Month, we are celebrating women in education today. And my next guest is also an individual that has done some extraordinary work, not just in the school district of Philadelphia, but for local community. And Shaquita Smith, who works in our curriculum, our Office of Academic Supports as a social studies curriculum specialist. Shaquita, thank you for being here with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Indeed. And so as before we went to the break, I was talking about your recent recognition by the Philadelphia Citizen as a 2020 integrity icon. And that is a global initiative to honor public servants who go above and beyond their job descriptions to uplift their communities in meaningful ways. Can you tell us about how it felt to receive this honor and the impact of this recognition on the work that you currently do?
Well, first of all, I'm very uncomfortable in the spotlight, so it was very surprising to me. However, it did let me know that it's important to continue the work that I've been doing with the School District of Philadelphia and just in education overall. I've been in education for over 20 years now. So it just really shed a light on how important it is to continue to do it as a social studies specialist and, working and collaborating with all of the other curriculum teams that are part of the School District of Philadelphia.
Thank you. And then, Shaquita, 2 weeks ago, and we're so glad that you're doing this work in the School District of Philadelphia, but 2 weeks ago, we had your colleagues, Dr. Nashawana Francis Thompson and LaTanya Miller on the show. And one of the things we talked about was our focus on how collectively as a district, we are looking at our academics and curriculum through a lens of equity and the need for Black voices. And we heard Dr. Clayton kind of close with ensuring that we recognize our Black leaders in our curriculum. Mm-hmm. In your integrity icon interview profile, you say, and I quote, "We don't want to have that romanticized version of history. History is hard. It's a challenging topic. And it's easy to just say you don't want to have a conversation about certain things because it may make people uncomfortable. but it's necessary to have those conversations so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, end quote. So how do you empower parents and teachers, including the critics, to really understand, that quote, especially when talking about issues around anti-racism and social justice?
Well, I think one of the best ways that I'm able to empower parents and other community members, especially those who are uncomfortable with that terminology, anti-racism and social justice, is to from a no blame perspective, but use the perspective of purpose and duty. You know, it's all of our duty to leave this world, this nation, and our communities in better conditions than we found it. And we can't do that if we still carry on with the policies and behaviors of the past that have denied certain people or certain groups seats at the table or a voice in the pulpit. And I think that it's our job as parents, teachers, and community members to ensure that that continues to happen. So we can leave the world in a better place than we found it for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, or whoever else may come along behind us. So, and I think I do that through curriculum development. I serve my purpose through curriculum development, teaching, and continuing to learn myself.
So critically important. And I know you are an extraordinary teacher because I had the opportunity to a couple of years ago, deliver a lesson plan that you did for me. So thank you for that. And it was quite successful. So thank you for that work. And can you talk a little bit about the work you do to support teachers? I mean, and you talked about being a learner yourself and hearing from other individuals, but you know that work also includes helping other individuals get more comfortable having these hard conversations, as you just talked about. But can you talk a little bit about how you go about that work?
I go about that work, first of all, addressing my own biases, because no matter who we are, we come into this work with biases and values that we have learned and have been innate from us since the moment we were born, and just those experiences that we have. And so addressing those and addressing how those experiences, biases, values counter other people's experiences, biases, and how can we come together to collaborate. And so that's the first way that I do that. And I'm constantly trying to learn myself because I know that those are like buzzwords, anti-racism, social justice. Those are like buzzwords, right? And there has to be a shared understanding of what that really means. So my first step was to really get an understanding of what it means, develop a shared understanding with the teachers that I'm working with. So I also attend professional development and other trainings. And then I come back and then I, try to help teachers understand what I learned in that training or those trainings or those professional developments, and then help them learn to translate that into the work that they do on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And because of the neighborhoods and communities we serve, and there are multiple cultures, it's certainly diverse demographics, and there are individuals who sometimes are more comfortable working with certain populations than other populations. How are you able to carry on those conversations with individuals who may not be comfortable covering some of the tough history that you talked about as being hard, right? And I know you try to engage individuals in the curriculum that we are currently creating to include all of the cultures, but by the same token, it also needs to be, to your point earlier, a level of comfort and non-judgment on individuals who are not comfortable in that space. And so what opportunities do teachers have to engage with you and others in the curriculum office to kind of work through some of those issues?
I think we've been doing with social studies, we've been doing a series of anti-racism and social justice trainings where we have those conversations and we make it a very open forum. And we say that, we don't all come to this table understanding and knowing all of this work. And it's okay if you don't. And if you're uncomfortable, we are available to help you, have a deeper conversation. And we are available to help you work through, as you're planning your lessons or is planning instruction for your classroom. We're also available to help you do that on a more personal level. If you're not comfortable speaking out and doing it here in this setting, we are available to you on a more personal level, because you can't change what you don't know if you don't acknowledge that you don't know it, right? Yeah. So you have to first acknowledge that, hey, I'm uncomfortable, and acknowledge it with another human being and say that. And then my job is to make sure that you do become comfortable. And how I do that is just say, well, I'm here for you. I'm on a personal level. If you don't want to do it in this larger group, I'm available for you. So it's one of the ways that I do it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And just one other question, and before we go to the next break, one of the things that Dr. Clayton talked about was ensuring that we were redoing our curriculum to account for all that has happened. Since she actually put a curriculum in place that really focused on African American history, and we want to thank her and others who were able to emerge that as a curriculum. And Philadelphia is known around the country for having a graduation requirement that requires children to take African American history. But this is beyond just African American history and the types of things that we're trying to get individuals to understand, particularly around anti-racism. And so can you talk a little bit about how we are not only dealing with or addressing or teaching the African American history, but really expounding upon that work as a part of our social studies curriculum?
Well, a few years ago, we actually received funding to begin rewriting the social studies curriculum and incorporating those narratives of women, the LGBTQ community, Asian community, the PI community, any of those communities that the narratives are kind of they're often shortened in textbooks. Yeah. And we include, primary sources, to that effect, government documents that actually analyze and evaluates the contributions of those communities to the history of the United States and the history of the world. So we started, and when we say, we keep saying history, but it's actually social studies, because if we look at how these groups have been traditionally excluded when it comes to geography, if we look at redlining, when it comes to economics, and we look about all the things that are available for first-time home buyers or home buyers in general. So it's really all of those, and even in government and how they're excluded from government, so we have been taking a look at the curriculum and making sure to add all of those pieces. And one of the things that we're actually doing now is we're creating web pages for each of those sort of monthly awareness months, where you're looking at Black History Month and Women's History Month. And we're making sure that there are web pages available throughout the year for students and teachers and parents actually to go to those websites throughout the year, because those months were actually set up as a culmination of celebrations for celebrating all of these groups of people throughout the school year. And it's this is the month where we finally, do this culmination celebration, but we've been learning about it throughout the entire school year. So we're also doing that to make sure that those narratives are heard and, yeah.
Well, Shaquita, and ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Shaquita Smith. She is a curriculum specialist in the School District of Philadelphia, and she's also a 2020 Integrity Icon named by the Philadelphia Citizen. And it's an honor to have her on this morning as we celebrate Women's History Month, and we're celebrating this morning celebrating women in education. And Shaquita is certainly a leader in our educational space and doing a lot of work in social studies out of our curriculum office. And so Shaquita, once again, congratulations to you on your recognition. I know you don't like the spotlight, but nonetheless, we wanted to put you in the spotlight this morning. Keep doing the magnificent work that you're doing with our teachers on behalf of the young people we serve. And when we come back from the break, we will be joined by President Brenda Allen. And President Allen is the president of Lincoln University, and we cannot wait to have a conversation with her. So Shaquita, thank you for joining us, and we'll go to break.
Thank you.
I went to check on Pop today. We put our hands up to the glass as if we were touching. But really, the only touching part was that we both tried to smile.
That's no way to say hello or goodbye. COVID-19 vaccines are here, but until enough of us are vaccinated, we'll all still need to help slow the spread. Keep a 6-foot distance, wear a mask, and avoid indoor social gatherings. Learn more about vaccines and slowing the spread at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
This literacy tip is brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania. If 2020 taught us anything, it's that scammers follow the headlines. And AARP Pennsylvania wants you to watch out for scammers taking advantage of the biggest headline, COVID vaccines. In the early weeks and months, expect limited supply of vaccines to be available only to certain high-risk populations. So, when you see an ad, email, text message, or you pick up a call and the offer is to resolve your vaccine for a fee, know it's a scam. Listen to your healthcare provider and health authorities for guidance and ignore all else. This literacy tip was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania. Small business owners are navigating an evolving small business landscape brought on by coronavirus. However, their resilience is reflected in Bank of America's 2020 Small Business Owner Report, a nationwide survey on 1,000 small business owners, which found that nearly 1/4 of small business owners took steps in 2020 to retool their offerings and/or leverage their resources to support relief efforts in their communities. While many saw an impact in their bottom line last year, small business owners anticipate a strong post-pandemic environment, and 79% believe small businesses will return to be the backbone of the U.S. economy. Inspired by the small business owners facing unprecedented challenges, Bank of America continues their commitment to help small business owners in Philadelphia with the necessary resources to sustain and grow. For more information, visit bankofamerica.com.
WURD Radio celebrates Women's History Month with the 2021 Level Up Contest. Join us as we embark on a 3-city contest that will highlight Black women-owned businesses who are making a difference in their communities. You can nominate yourself or your favorite Black woman-owned business and enter to win a marketing campaign valued at $5,000. Level Up is a joint production of WURD Radio in Philadelphia, WVON in Chicago, and KJLH in Los Angeles. These 3 Black-owned stations are joining forces to host a historic, interactive, and multimedia contest spotlighting Black women-owned businesses in Philly, Chicago, and Los Angeles. The deadline for submissions is March 15th. Philadelphia finalists will be featured in a special 2-hour live on-air pitch party on March 31st, where the Philadelphia winner will be selected. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Level Up banner for more information or to nominate yourself or a Black woman-owned business you love. The 2021 Level Up contest is sponsored by Comcast, Bank of America, PICO, Keystone First, Thomas Jefferson University, and Jefferson Health.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
And we're back here on the Education Pulse. I'm turning it back to Dr. Height.
Thank you, Jordan. And it is now my privilege to introduce our third guest in a segment that celebrates Women's History Month. And that is the 14th president of Lincoln University, and that is Dr. Brenda Allen. And Dr. Allen, thank you for joining us on Education Pulse this morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thanks. And it's great to see and hear you this morning, and thank you for being with us. And you follow Dr. Constance Clayton, who was on an earlier segment, who was the first Black superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia, African-American superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia, and the first woman superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia, Shaquita Smith, who works in their curriculum office and social studies. She's a social studies specialist, and she was an Integrity Icon Award recipient in 2020. Now we have the president of Lincoln University, and in January of this year, you were named one of the 10 most dominant HBCU leaders of 2021 by the HBCU Campaign Fund. Can you share your thoughts on the significance of this honor as the 14th president of the nation's first degree-granting historically Black college and university?
Well, again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, pleasure to meet you. Heard a lot about you, but never got a chance to meet you. So nice to meet you virtually.
Likewise.
The honor was quite great, primarily because of the company that I was in. So it included presidents who have been doing this for, as long as 20, 25 years, and Jimmy Jenkins down at Livingstone College, presidents at Howard University, and so on. So to be included in that group of individuals who have a much longer reign in this seat than I is quite an honor to be among that class.
Oh, thank you so much. And can you talk a little bit about some of the priorities you are working on, specific to national conversations around improving the diversity of teachers in the workplace?
Well, I think that I'm biased towards the liberal arts education, so I'll start there, and really believe that with a good foundation in the liberal arts, you really can prepare people to go on and be anything that they please. Having graduated from Lincoln some 40 plus years ago, I have had a professional career that was really stimulated by its start here on this campus. And so I am just living testimony to just how powerful that education can be to prepare you to go on. As far as moving into the teaching realm, it's so important that we not only produce teachers of color, but especially produce teachers of color to be in the areas where our children are being served.
Yes.
Having had a long career in doing research and education and best practices and pedagogy, and really understanding the importance of understanding your student from a cultural and also racial and circumstance point of view, as an effort to really engage them in learning, is so important. The data supports that, the data suggests that, and one of the ways that we do that is really by putting people in front of them who look like them, who've had shared experiences with them in such a way that they make that connection. And so through our education, we really are preparing individuals to choose teaching if they would like once they get done, but also to go into leadership in positions like you have, because a lot of this is really embedded in policy. And as you were discussing in the previous conversation, the curriculum, what are all students being taught, right? And how important are the life experiences of people of color and other marginalized groups being embedded in the overall education for all students becomes really important as well. So producing college graduates who not only go into the classroom, but who also go into administration and do things similar to the position that you have, I think will be so important for changing just the K-12 education globally.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Allen. And one of the things you said that resonated with me is like not just thinking about teaching as an application, but also thinking about leadership. And we want to think of our teachers as leaders and really carrying on some of the conversations that Shaquita was mentioning in the prior conversation, so that we can talk more openly about what our families and communities are experiencing, social justice types of issues, biases, and all of those things, and individuals who want to actually lead those conversations, particularly with our future leaders who are sitting in our classrooms right now. So we're trying to prepare children, at least in the school district of Philadelphia, to identify teaching as an application, and then go to Lincoln to be trained in order to do that and become leaders as well. And as the 14th president of Lincoln, I mean, and you talked a lot about we talked a lot about your acknowledgement and the work that you're seeing, particularly in the liberal arts in the humanities space. But like overall, like 5 years from now, if in fact we are talking about, if we're looking back, what would be success for you as president of Lincoln University?
Well, you know, one of the great challenges for historically Black colleges in general is making sure that our students are not only recruited, but they also graduate in a timely fashion. And we know that part of that has to do with finance. And so as higher education in general is sort of the price is outpacing increases in income, really working very hard to garner the resources to ensure that our students are not just admitted, but that they graduate in a timely fashion is really very important to me. And so we are placing a lot of emphasis on making sure that we can close that gap between the financial aid sources that students receive, what their families can contribute, and the real cost of attendance. For us, we know that many of our students are stopping out of school, not because they are academically challenged, but because they are financially challenged. And we want to make sure that we close that gap. Second is really ensuring that when our students graduate, that they are really going on and thriving post-graduation. So increasing the number of our students who are actually employed within the first 6 months after they graduate. Increasing, again, the number of our students who are going on to graduate and professional schools to be able to be a part of, you know, just a larger legacy of leaders that Lincoln is so known for producing. We're also interested in making sure that our students leave here with a commitment to being a part of the social justice, racial equality conversation. Are we really preparing our students to actually go out and sit at the table so that their voices are heard in their own corporate or other industries in which they work, but also making an impact on the communities that are so much in need of leadership now? And so, you know, 5 years from now, if I get all those indicators the way they're moving right now, I feel like I will have come back home and done what it is I am to do at this point in time to ensure that the Lincoln legacy remains strong. We have a very strong history, and we want to make sure that that's not compromised by some of the financial and other challenges that students from the Black communities have today when they try to finish their college education.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I know has been difficult for us, it's been navigating through this pandemic. But it also presents opportunities for us to think differently about how we educate moving forward. I would imagine you've experienced similar difficulties, but have you also seen some opportunities moving forward that you've learned as a part of navigating the pandemic?
The biggest thing for me has been learning the opportunities and the challenges of the virtual world.
Yeah.
So we have come to understand that there is a lot more we can do through technology, more so than we were doing before the pandemic. So we had to, you know, it's been a year, almost a year to the day that I sent students home. And over the course of this academic year, we've had a small population of students on campus, but we have not brought back our full group of students. And so we've been using technology a lot to deliver education. And I think that that's been the opportunity, and going forward, we will continue to do that. But the thing that we've seen that's also a challenge, and especially for a place like Lincoln, our hallmark is really the face-to-face education. It is the social capital that our students get when they come to a campus like this, engage with students from all around the country, to be able to be where professors are, to engage them on a daily basis. And so it's also highlighted for me the real importance of place in campus, in an HBCU environment in particular. And so I've come to understand that while we can use technology more than we had or did pre-pandemic, that technology for what we do cannot replace the full education that we offer in this residential setting. And so for us, it's going to be the balance of using technology more to engage students, but at the same time, understand the importance of what it means to be on a campus and to be engaged with people from different communities, from folk who bring something different than what you may have in your own community, and how that together is what's transformative for our educational experience.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And we're talking to Dr. Brenda Allen, president of the 14th president of Lincoln University. And President Allen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And President Allen was named, and I have to say this again, as the 10 most dominant HBCU leaders of 2021 by the HBCU Campaign Fund. So President Allen, thank you for being up on a Saturday and choosing to spend some time with us and helping us celebrate Women's History Month. And so thank you for the work that you do at Lincoln and the work that you do on behalf of all of the young people.
Well, thank you. And thank you again, and nice meeting you.
Likewise. And this, as we wrap up the show, I also want to acknowledge and make sure people, I want to remind people that we still have hotlines that are open. You can call those hotlines that are available in 10 different languages, 215-400-5300. Hotline numbers for other languages can be found at philasd.org/AES. Kindergarten registration for 21-22 is still open for children who will be 5 on or before September 1, 2021. And you can learn more by visiting philasd.org/thrive@5. I want to thank Jordan Booth, the in-station engineer, and executive producers, Hania Shop Brown and Evelyn Sample Oates. Thank you for doing another remarkable job on producing Education Pulse this week. With that, everybody, take care, be safe.